Pulmonary function tests, or your PFTs, are routinely used in patients with chronic respiratory disorders. They are performed to assess your respiratory function and to determine the extent of dysfunctions. Such tests include measurements of lung volumes, ventilatory function, and the mechanics of breathing, diffusion, and gas exchange. Your PFTs are useful in following the course of a patient with an established respiratory disease and assessing the response to therapy. Another use is to screen as a screening test in potentially hazardous industries such as coal mining and those that involve exposure to asbestos and other noxious fumes, dusts, or gases. It is also used for screening patients scheduled for thoracic and upper abdominal surgery and symptomatic patients with a history suggesting high risk. Your PFT is performed by a technician using a spirometer that has a volume collecting device attached to a recorder that demonstrate volume and time simultaneously. A number of tests are carried out because no single measurement provides a complete picture of your pulmonary functions. Methods include your exercise tidal volume loops, negative expiratory pressure, nitric oxide, and forced oscillation. These assessment methods will allow for a detailed evaluation of expiratory flow limitations and airway inflammation. Results of your PFT are interpreted on the basis of the degree of deviation from normal, taking into consideration the patient's height, weight, age, and gender. Because there is a wide range of normal values, PFTs may not detect early localized changes. The patient with respiratory symptoms such as dyspnea, wheezing, cough, sputum production usually undergoes a complete diagnostic evaluation even though the results of PFTs are normal. Trends of results provide information about disease progression as well as the patient's response to therapy. Now, patients with respiratory disorders may be taught how to measure their peak flow rate. It reflects the maximal expiratory flow at home using a spirometer. This allows them to monitor the progress of therapy, to alter medications and other interventions as needed based on caregiver guidelines, and to notify the healthcare provider if there is an inadequate response to their own intervention. So, pre-procedure, determine whether an analgesic that may depress the respiratory function is being administered. And then consult your healthcare provider regarding the withholding of your bronchodilator before testing, just to prevent a false positive or a false negative result. And then instruct the client to void before the procedure and to wear loose clothing. Basically, para lang magkaroon ng walang limitation sa may chest area. Remove dentures and also to instruct the client to refrain from smoking or eating a heavy meal for 4 to 6 hours before the tests. Post-procedure, the client now may resume a normal diet and any bronchodilators and respiratory treatments that were withheld before the procedure. Biopsy. When we say biopsy, there is a excision of a small amount of tissue which may be performed to permit the examination of your cells from the pharynx, larynx, and nasal passages. Anesthesia to be used, pwedeng local, topical, or general anesthesia. Depende sa site at saka sa procedure. Under your biopsy, we have your pleural biopsy. It is accomplished by a needle biopsy of the pleura or by pleuroscopy. When we say oscopy, it is the use of fiber optic bronchoscope with a direct visual exploration. So it will be inserted in the pleural space. Your pleural biopsy is performed when there is a pleural exudate or of undetermined origin and when there is a need to culture or stain the tissue to identify tuberculosis or punjat. Then we proceed to your lung biopsy. So let's say meron siyang may chest x-ray findings na inconclusive or it will show a pulmonary density. When we say density, pwede siyang may indicate kasi na infiltration or a lesion. So the doctor will now ask for a biopsy to obtain lung tissue for examination and also to identify the nature of the lesions. Now, there are several non-surgical lung biopsy techniques that can be used but will also yield an accurate information with low morbidity. Number 1 here is your transcatheter bronchial brushing. Number 2 is your transbronchial lung biopsy. And number 3 is your percutaneous or the through the skin needle biopsy. In your transcatheter bronchial brushing, a fiber optic bronchoscope will be introduced into the bronchus under a fluoroscopy. So a small brush is attached at the end of the flexible wire and is inserted through the bronchoscope. So under the direct visualization, pag nakita na yung area of suspicion, they will use the brush to, they will brush it back and forth, and then this will now cause the cell to slough off and adhere to the brush. Now, the catheter port of the bronchoscope may be used to irrigate the lung tissue with a saline solution to secure materials for additional studies. Ngayon, yung brush, pwede nilang tanggalin na sa bronchoscope and a microscopic slide is made. Now, the brush also can be cut off and be sent to a pathology laboratory for analysis. This procedure is useful for cytologic evaluation of lung lesions and for the identification of pathogenic organisms. It is especially useful in the immunologically compromised patient, while a transbronchial lung biopsy uses a biting or a cutting forceps which will be introduced in the fiber optic bronchoscope. Now, a biopsy is indicated when a lung lesion is suspected and the result of a routine sputum samples and bronchoscopic washing are negative. Another method of your bronchial brushing will involve the introduction of the catheter through the transcricothyroid membrane by a needle puncture. After this procedure, the patient is instructed to hold a finger or thumb over the puncture site while coughing to prevent the air from leaking into the surrounding tissues. Percutaneous needle biopsy may be accomplished with a cutting needle or by aspiration with a spinal type needle that provides a tissue specimen for histologic study. Now, an analgesia may be administered before the procedure. The skin over the biopsy site is cleansed and anesthetized, and a small incision is made. The biopsy needle is inserted through the incision into the pleura with the patient holding the breath in mid-expiration. Using fluoroscopic monitoring, the surgeon now guides the needle into the periphery of the lesion and obtains a tissue sample from the masts. Possible complication for your lung biopsy is that it include pneumothorax, pulmonary hemorrhage, and empyema. So, our nursing intervention: maintain NPO as prescribed. Inform the client that the local anesthetic will be used for a needle biopsy, but a sensation of pressure during the needle insertion and aspiration may be felt. And yun nga kanina, administration of your analgesia or a sedative as prescribed. Post-procedure, after the procedure, recovery and home care are similar to those for bronchoscopy and thoracoscopy. Nursing care will now involve the monitoring the patient for shortness of breath, bleeding, and infection. For the preparation for discharge, the patient or the family is instructed to report pain, SOB, visible bleeding, or redness of the biopsy site, or kung may nana or pus to the health, then they will report it to the healthcare provider immediately. Patients who have undergone biopsy are often anxious and because of the need of the biopsy and the potential findings. So as a nurse, you must consider this in providing your post-biopsy care and teaching. Another biopsy under your biopsy will be your lymph node biopsy. The scalene lymph nodes are enmeshed in the deep cervical pad of fat overlying the scalenus anterior muscle. Now, they drain the lungs and mediastinum and may show histologic changes from intrathoracic diseases. When these nodes are palpable on physical examination, a scalene node biopsy may be performed. A biopsy of these nodes may be performed to detect lymph node spread of pulmonary disease and to establish a diagnosis or prognosis in certain diseases such as your Hodgkin disease, sarcoidosis, fungal disease, tuberculosis, and carcinoma. Your mediastinoscopy, ito hindi na masyadong ginagamit kasi meron tayong EBUS. It is the endoscopic examination of the mediastinum for exploration and biopsy of mediastinal lymph nodes that drains the lungs. This examination now does not require a thoracotomy. Biopsy is usually performed through a suprasternal incision. Your mediastinoscopy is carried out to detect mediastinal involvement of pulmonary malignancy and also to obtain tissue for diagnostic studies and other conditions such as your sarcoidosis. An anterior mediastinotomy is thought to provide your better exposure and diagnostic possibilities than a mediastinoscopy. An incision is made in the area of the second or third costal cartilage and the mediastinum is explored and biopsies are performed on any lymph nodes found. A chest tube drainage is required after the procedure and mediastinotomy is particularly valuable to determine whether a pulmonary lesion is resectable. Nursing intervention, post-procedure, it focuses again on providing adequate oxygenation, monitoring for bleeding, and providing pain relief. The patient may be discharged a few hours after the chest drainage system is removed. Now, the nurse should instruct the patient and family about monitoring for changes in respiratory status, taking into consideration the impact of anxiety about the potential findings of the biopsy on their ability to remember those instructions. Another diagnostic evaluation is your imaging studies. Under your imaging studies are your computed tomography or your CT scans, magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, contrast studies, and radioisotope diagnostic scans that can be a part of your diagnostic workup. This may range from a determination of the extent of infection in sinusitis to tumor growth in cancer. Let's go first on your computed tomography. CT is an imaging method in which the lungs are scanned in successive layers by a narrow beam X-ray. Now, the images produced provide a cross-sectional view of the chest, whereas the chest X-ray shows major contrast between body densities such as bones, soft tissues, and air. Your CT scans now can distinguish fine tissue density. CT may be used to define pulmonary nodules and small tumors adjacent to your pleural spaces that are not visible on routine chest X-ray, and to demonstrate mediastinal abnormalities and hilar adenopathy, which are difficult to visualize with other techniques. Contrast agents are useful when evaluating the mediastinum and in its content. MRI or your magnetic resonance imaging, they are similar to your CT scans except that the magnetic fields and radio frequency signals are used instead of a narrow beam X-ray. Your MRI yield a much more detailed diagnostic image than your CT scans. MRI is used to characterize pulmonary nodules, stage your bronchogenic carcinoma. It is used for the assessment of your chest wall invasion and evaluate inflammatory activity in interstitial lung disease, acute pulmonary embolism, and chronic thrombolytic pulmonary hypertension. What is not also included here is your PET scan or your positron emission tomography. The positron emission tomography is a radioisotope study with advanced diagnostic capabilities. It is used to evaluate lung nodules for malignancy. Your PET scans can detect and display metabolic changes in tissue, distinguish your normal tissue from tissues that are diseased, such as in cancer. It also differentiates viable from dead or dying tissues, and it shows regional blood flow, and it determines the distribution and fate of medication in the body. Your PET scans are more accurate in detecting malignancies than your CT scans, and they have an equivalent accuracy in detecting malignant nodules when compared to your invasive procedures such as thoracoscopy. While for your ventilation perfusion lung scan, it is performed by injecting a radioactive agent into a peripheral vein and then obtaining a scan of the chest to detect radiation. Now, the isotope particles pass through the right side of the heart and are distributed into the lungs in amounts proportion to the regional blood flow, making it possible to trace and measure blood perfusion through the lung. Now, this procedure is used clinically to measure the integrity of the pulmonary vessels relative to your blood flow and evaluate the blood flow abnormalities, as seen in the pulmonary emboli. Now, the imaging time is 20 to 40 minutes, during which the patient will lie under the camera with a mask fitted over the nose and mouth. This is followed by ventilation component of the scan. The patient takes a deep breath of a mixture of oxygen and radioactive gas, which diffuses throughout the lungs. Now, the scan is performed to detect ventilation abnormalities in patients who have regional differences in ventilation. It may be helpful in the diagnosis of bronchitis, asthma, inflammatory fibrosis, pneumonia, emphysema, and lung cancer. The ventilation without perfusion is seen with your pulmonary emboli. Now, for radioisotope diagnostic procedures or your lung scans, tatlo dapat ang naka-under dito. We have your ventilation perfusion scan, the gallium scan, and your PET scan. For the gallium scan, it is a radioisotope lung scan used to detect inflammatory conditions, abscesses, adhesions, and the presence, location, and size of your tumors. It is used to stage your bronchogenic cancer and record tumor regressions after chemotherapy or radiation. Your gallium is injected intravenously, and scans are taken at 6, 24, and or 48 hours to evaluate gallium uptake by the pulmonary tissue. So, pre-procedure, you have to assess the client for allergies to dye, iodine, or seafood, since we are going to use a radio isotopes. Then remove your jewelry around the chest area. Usually, this is for your PET scan kasi baka ma-attach yung patient, yung metal kasi ina-attract nung PET scan machine. And then you review the breathing methods that may be required during testing. So the patient should be able to hold the breath or inhale deeply, yung mga ganun. And then establish an IV access. It is where your radioisotopes will be injected and administer sedation if prescribed. So if your patient is very anxious, hindi siya makapag-stay ng matagal na hindi gumagalaw, then you can administer your sedation. And then have your emergency resuscitation equipment available. Aside from your bag valve mask, maybe isama mo na din ang epinephrine kasi we are going to use your radio dye. Post-procedure, you have to monitor the client for reaction to the radionuclide. So, also look again for the delayed reaction of your allergies and instruct the client that the radionuclide clears from the body in about 8 hours. So, para lang ma-eliminate yung radionuclide, you can ask your patient to increase the fluid intake. Pero, ang problema dun is pag sa ventilation perfusion lung scan because it is inhaled. So, you can just ask the patient to breathe in naturally. So, in this slide, you can see the normal perfusion ventilation or lung scan. MAN2 test or MAN2 tuberculin skin test or your TST is the standard method of determining whether a person is infected with Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So how it is administered, the TST is performed by injecting a 0.1 ml of your tuberculin purified protein derivative, also known as your PPD, into the inner surface of the forearm. The injection should be made with a tuberculin syringe with the bevel facing upward. So the TST is an intradermal injection, and when placed correctly, the injection should produce a pale elevation of the skin, or what you call wheal. So gaano kalaki yung wheal? It has to be 6 to 10 millimeter in diameter. The reading of your TST is between 48 and 72 hours after administration. So kung after 72 hours at hindi nakapunta yung patient, we will now reschedule that patient for another skin test. The reaction should be measured in millimeters of the induration. Pag sinabi natin induration, it is the palpable raised hardened area or swelling. Now, the reader should not measure the erythema or the redness. The diameter of the indurated area should be measured across the forearm perpendicular to the long axis. So how would the reaction on the skin test interpreted? It will depend on your two factors, the measurement in millimeters of the induration and the person's risk being infected with TB and progression to disease if infected. So what are the classification of the tuberculin skin test reaction? First, if you have an induration of 5 or millimeter, it is considered positive to HIV infected persons, person who have a recent contact with a person with TB disease, a patient with fibrotic changes on chest radiograph, which is consistent with prior TB, a patient with organ transplant, persons who are immunosuppressed for other reasons such as taking the equivalent of greater than 15 mg per day of prednisone for 1 month or longer, those who are taking TNF alpha antagonists. Now, if your induration of 10 or more millimeters, it is considered positive naman for recent immigrants, those who have less than 5 years from high prevalence countries, injection drug users, residents and employees of high-risk congregate settings, a mycobacteriology laboratory personnel, persons with clinical conditions that place them at high risk, children less than 4 years of age, infants, children, and adolescents exposed to adults in high risk categories. Now, if the induration is 15 or more millimeter, it is considered positive in any person, including persons with no known risk factor for TB. However, targeted skin testing programs should only be conducted among your high risk groups. Now, paano naman kung nag-positive siya sa Manto test, although hindi siya infected ng Mycobacterium tuberculosis? They are called your false positive reaction. So, what are the causes of your false positive reaction? These may include, but are not limited to, the following: infection with non-tuberculosis mycobacteria, previous BCG vaccination, incorrect method of TST administration, incorrect interpretation of reaction, incorrect battle of antigen used. Kung meron tayong false positive, meron din tayong false negative. Although infected siya with Mycobacterium tuberculosis, nag-negative siya sa Manto test. So the reason of this may be included on these causes but not limited to the following. Cutaneous allergy, when we say allergy, is the inability to react to skin test because of a weakened immune system. A recent TB infection within 8 to 10 weeks of exposure. A very old TB infection, many years na nung na-infect siya. A very young age, so less than 6 months old. A recent live virus vaccination. Example of the vaccination is measles and smallpox. An overwhelming TB disease, some viral illnesses such as measles and chickenpox, incorrect method of your TST administration, and incorrect interpretation of reaction. So who can receive your Manto tests? Most person can receive your Manto tests, and it is only contraindicated for persons who have had a severe reaction. Ano tong mga severe reactions na to? Pag nagkaroon ng necrosis, blistering, anaphylactic shock, or ulceration dun sa previous niyang Manto test. So generally, it is not contraindicated for any other persons, including infants, children, pregnant women, persons who are HIV infected, or persons who have been vaccinated with BCG. How often does your Manto test can be repeated? In general, there is no risk associated with repeated tuberculin skin test placement. Parang yung sinabi ko kanina, pag hindi siya nakapunta for reading for after 72 hours, then a second test can be placed as soon as possible. So there is no contraindication to repeating the Manto test unless a previous TST was also associated with your severe reaction. Ano naman ang tinatawag na boosted reaction? In some persons who are infected with your Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the ability to react to your tuberculin may wane over time. So when given a TST years after infection, this person may have false negative reaction. However, the TST may stimulate the immune system, causing a positive or boosted reaction to subsequent test. So, giving a second Manto test after an initial negative TST reaction is called your two-step testing. So, ano naman ang two-step testing? A two-step testing is useful for the initial skin testing of adults who are going to be retested periodically. Sino yung mga nare-retest dito? So, we have our healthcare workers or your nursing home residents. So this two-step approach can reduce the likelihood that a boosted reaction to a subsequent TST will be misinterpreted as a recent infection. Can our Manto test be given to persons receiving vaccination? So vaccinations with live viruses may interfere with your Manto test reaction. So for persons who has been scheduled to receive your Manto tests, The test should be done as follows: either on the same day as the vaccination with live virus vaccine or 4 to 6 weeks after the administration of the live virus vaccine. If it is naman a smallpox vaccination, at least 1 month after. Or your ABGs. Your arterial blood gas studies is the measurement of your blood pH and of your arterial oxygen and carbon dioxide tensions, which is obtained when managing patients with respiratory problems and in adjusting your oxygen therapy as needed. The arterial oxygen tension, or your PaO2, indicates the degree of oxygenation of the blood, and the arterial carbon dioxide tension, or your partial carbon dioxide, indicates the adequacy of alveolar ventilation. Arterial blood gas studies aid in assessing the ability of the lungs to provide adequate oxygen and remove carbon dioxide, and the ability of the kidneys to reabsorb or excrete bicarbonate ions to maintain your normal body pH. Serial blood gas analysis also is a sensitive indicator of whether the lung has been damaged after chest trauma. Arterial blood gas levels are obtained through an arterial puncture at the radial, brachial, or femoral artery, or through an indwelling arterial catheter. Your ABG gas level will be discussed in detail during your fluid and electrolytes acid-base balance. Okay? So before we do your ABGs, lagi nating naririnig ang Allen's tests. So ano nga ba ang Allen's tests? The Allen's test is used to assess your collateral blood flow within the hands. This is specifically testing for the presence of a complete palmar arch. So, sino ang naka-invent or naka-discover ng ating Allen's test? It is Dr. Edgar Van Noys Allen. Dr. Allen is a specialist in your cardiovascular medicine and known for his research in peripheral vascular disease. So, how is Allen's test done? You explain the procedure to the client. You apply pressure over the ulnar and radial arteries simultaneously. You ask the client to open and close the hand repeatedly, then release the pressure from the ulnar artery while compressing the radial artery. Now assess the color of the extremity distal to the pressure point, and then you document the findings. So how will you rate the test that you have done to your patient? Kailan mo masasabing normal finding? It is normal if the color comes back to your hand within 5 to 15 seconds. It means that one artery is healthy enough to supply blood to your hand all by itself. Isa kasi sa nagiging complications when we do our ABG extraction is that nagkakaroon ng ischemia or risk for ischemia doon sa may hand natin. That's why we are checking for the collateral circulation of the hand. Normal values for your ABG, we have our pH is 7.35 to 7.45. Your PCO2 is 35 to 45 millimeter mercury. Your HCO3 is 20 to 27 millimeter mercury, and your partial oxygenation is 80 to 100 millimeter mercury. Pulse oximetry is a non-invasive methods of continuously monitoring the oxygen saturation of hemoglobin. Although the pulse oximetry does not replace your arterial blood gas measurement, it is an effective tool to monitor for subtle or sudden changes in oxygen saturation. It is used in all settings where oxygen saturation monitoring is needed, such as the home, clinics, ambulatory, surgical settings, and hospital. As you can all recall, sa fundamentals of nursing nyo, your O2 saturation is already included as one of your vital signs. So a probe or sensor is attached to the fingertips, pwedeng fingertips, forehead, earlobes, or bridge of the nose. Pero pinaka-least na gagamitin mo yung bridge of the nose. Now, the sensor will detect changes in oxygen saturation levels by monitoring the light signals generated by the oximeter and reflected by blood pulsing through the tissue at the probe. Your normal O2 values are 95% to 100%. So, pag ito ang reading, normal lang siya. Values less than 85% will indicate that the tissue is not already receiving enough oxygen and the patient needs further evaluation. For the SpO2, values obtained by pulse oximetry are unreliable in cardiac arrest and shock, or let's say when diced, yung methylene blue or a vasoconstrictor medications have been used, or when the patients have severe anemia or a high carbon monoxide level. These are some examples of your interpretation for the results, and also a quick management when your patient is having a below the normal values of your O2 saturation, or kung nagdedesat yung patient. So, less than 91%, immediate treatment is needed. So, high followers mo siya, and you give your O2 via partial rebreathing masks or non-rebreathing masks. Don't put already nasal cannula. Walang kwenta yun. Decrease your less than 85%. So the tissues of the body have difficulty time becoming oxygenated. So possible yung doctor mag-intubate or tracheostomy. Depende sa magiging presenting symptoms ng patient. Less than 70%, this is already considered as fatal. So, mag-i-intubate talaga yung doctor, or a tracheostomy will be done. Pero pag nag-read out naman po kayo ng masyadong mababa ang result, let's say less than 85 or less than 70, and the patient is okay, wala naman siyang difficulty on breathing, hindi siya distressed, check kung yung kamay niya is cold or hindi nakaayos ng yung clip nung pulse oximeter.